Namaskar, dear learners and listeners. I am Anita Devraj today and I welcome you back to another session of History of the Secondary Courses. World War II, like the earlier war, started in Europe and assumed the character of a world war. The fascist countries wanted to re-divide the world for imperialist gains and thus came into conflict with the established power. We know that Germany was politically, militarily and economically shattered by the Treaty of Versailles. She sought revenge and was ready to have a trial of strength with the Allied powers. The position of Italy was no better. Though Italy joined the Allied powers during World War I with the hope of imperial gain, she did not gain any colonies after the war. She lost nearly 600,000 people during the war. Both the fascist and Nazi parties glorified war and promised to their people that they would bring back the lost glory of their countries through war. They began to follow an aggressive policy of expansion through conquests. Germany annexed Rhineland in 1936, Austria in 1938 and Czechoslovakia in 1938, while Italy attacked Ethiopia. This resulted in social tension and conflict among European nations. The period of 20 years between the two world wars experienced tremendous changes. There was positive developments like national awakening in countries of Asia and Africa also, and popularity of the socialist movement in the Soviet Union and in other countries. The world also saw the worst form of dictatorship in many countries of Europe, especially in Italy and Germany. A major economic crisis took place which affected almost every part of the world, particularly the most advanced countries of the West. The period also witnessed the worst economic depression in USA in 1929, which affected the economy of the entire world. After the war, a number of political movements arose in Europe which was given the name fascism. They had a number of features which were common, that is hostility to democracy and socialism and the aim to establish dictatorship. They were supported by the rulers, the upper class, aristocrats and the capitalists because they promised to save them from the dangers of socialism. They let loose a systematic campaign of terrorism and murder which the government showed little interest in curbing. The dictatorship introduced in Italy by Mussolini is referred to as fascism. The term fascism is derived from Latin word fasces, which stood for symbols of authority in ancient Rome. In 1922, Mussolini came to power with the support of the Italian king and ruled like a dictator from 1925 to 1943. The German version of fascism is known as Nazism. It was established by Adolf Hitler. He promised to reverse post-war settlements and restore German power and glory. His vision of rebuilding Germany into a great nation inspired many Germans to join him. England and France too had to face severe economic crisis, scarcity and unemployment, but they continued with their democratic governments. Despite worker strikes and other disturbances in England, the problems were sought to be solved by forming a coalition government consisting of Labour, Liberal and Conservative parties in 1931. In France, a Popular Front government consisting of left-wing parties was set up in 1936. Soviet Union emerged as the first socialist state of the world. Under the new government, socialist policies were introduced in economy and it was the only country to remain unaffected while all the Western capitalist countries suffered due to the economic depression in 1929. Though USA participated in First World War, the country did not suffer much material loss. Industrial prosperity, political stability and economic growth made it a superpower. However, she suffered the worst economic crisis in 1929 due to overproduction. The banks closed down and people lost their lifelong savings. The loan which USA had given to the European countries after the First World War had to be withdrawn. It resulted in economic instability in the European countries also. The new government that came to power in USA under Franklin Roosevelt introduced a program of economic recovery called the New Deal. Under this, many reforms were introduced, such as creating new employment opportunities, giving help to the farmers, etc. Japan was the only country in Asia which emerged as an imperialist country. You have already read that it defeated Russia in 1905. During the period between the two world wars, Japan became a strong military power and supported fascism. She signed the Rome-Berlin-Tokyo Axis with the fascist powers. She also signed the Anti-Comintern Pact to check the spread of communism along with Germany and Italy, indicating their hostility to the Soviet Union. You can understand about the rise of Japan as a military power and also her support for fascist powers. By signing the Rome-Berlin-Tokyo Axis, these three powers committed support to each other. Japan was given a free hand to expand control in Asia and the region of the Pacific, while Germany and Italy would have a free hand in Europe. The success of the Soviet Union alarmed the Western powers. Being capitalist countries, they wanted to check the spread of communism. So they adopted a systematic policy of favoring Italy and Germany, who were anti-communists. This policy is referred to as the appeasement policy. German army, which was restricted to 100,000 soldiers after the First World War, increased her strength to 800,000 soldiers without any protest from the Western treaty spectators. In 1937, civil war began in Spain between the popularly elected government and the fascist leader under General Franco. Hitler supplied arms and ammunition to overthrow the democratically elected government in Spain. Soviet Union appealed to England for collective action against General Franco. When the whole world sent support to the existing government, England and France did not take any action. This appeasement policy reached its climax when Hitler invited the prime ministers of Britain and France to Munich in August 1938. The Munich Pact was signed by them in 1938, allowing Germany to annex Sudetenland in the northern part of Czechoslovakia. Later, the whole of Czechoslovakia was a policy of appeasement, strengthened the fascist powers. It was now clear that Britain and France wanted Germany and Italy to act against the Soviet Union. To stall these plans, Soviet Union signed a pact with Germany by which both agreed not to attack one another. This gave her some time to prepare for future confrontation, while Germany obtained the neutrality of the Soviet Union. The scene was set for World War II when Germany attacked Poland on 1st September 1939. Britain declared war on Germany on 3rd September 1939. Now, let us look into the consequences of this war. The war came to an end in September 1945. This was the most destructive war in human history. It caused unprecedented loss of life, property and resources. Big buildings were razed to the ground and thousands of people were uprooted from their homelands. The German Jews were either exterminated or sent to concentration camps. The Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki were almost wiped off when atomic bombs were dropped on them. The danger of nuclear holocaust was one of the major consequences of the war. Germany was divided into 4 zones, each under the control of one of the victorious powers. The Nazi party was banned and the German army disbanded. Japan was placed under United States supervision. In 1949, when monarchy was re-established, United States troops were withdrawn. Imperialism weakened with USA and the Soviet Union emerging as superpowers. The world was now divided into two power blocks: the communist bloc headed by the Soviet Union and the Western bloc headed by the United States. The tension and unarmed conflict that developed between these blocs started the Cold War, which continued for a very long time. A major impact of the war was the foundation of the United Nations organization. The world has since then undergone many changes. Its political map has changed. A large number of nations of Asia and Africa who had suffered under colonial rule are now independent. Together, they are now a major force in the world. We will also discuss over here the foundations of the United Nations organization. The horrors of the war made the world leaders realize the need for an international organization for peace. World leaders such as British Prime Minister Winston Churchill, Soviet leader Stalin, and US President Roosevelt met at various conferences to decide about the formation of this organization. Finally, on 24th October 1945, at a conference in San Francisco, the United Nations Charter was adopted by the members of 50 nations and the UNO was formed. Since then, 24th October is celebrated every year as UN Day all over the world. The UN is based on the principle of sovereignty and equality of all nations. The main aims of the UN are to maintain peace and security in the world, to prevent future war, to solve international disputes peacefully, and to promote international cooperation. The UN flag consists of the official emblem of the organization, a circular world map as seen from the North Pole, surrounded by a wreath of olive branches in white, centered on a light blue background. Now, what do you think would be the objectives of the United Nations? Like the League of Nations, which was established after World War I, the United Nations too had a major objective of maintaining international peace and security. It also had another major objective to develop friendly relations among nations on the basis of equality and achieving international cooperation in solving economic, social, cultural, and humanitarian problems. To promote human rights and fundamental freedom for the people of the world was one of the aims of the UN. It was also to act as a common platform for harmonizing the activities of various nations for the attainment of the objectives of the UN. Thank you very much for listening.